I'd like to call the March 2023 MTA Bridges and Tunnel Committee to order. Mr. Freeman, are there any public speakers?
Good morning, Madam Chair. We have 5 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that, in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware of the clock in the front of the room and the warning light you will see, reminding you that you have 30 seconds left to conclude your remarks. The first speaker will be Liam Blank. Following will be Murray Bowden, followed by Jesse Figueroa.
Good morning. My name is Liam Blank. I am the Associate Director of PCAC, the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. Today, I'd like to emphasize the importance of effective toll enforcement in preserving the financial stability of the MTA. The recent seizure of 20 vehicles at the Verrazano Bridge, where persistent toll violators owed nearly $600,000 in unpaid tolls and fees, highlights the dedication of our bridge and tunnel officers to protect our city's transportation infrastructure. At a time when our city and state continue to recover from the economic fallout of the pandemic, any loss of revenue for the MTA is too much. Ensuring effective toll enforcement is crucial for securing the resources needed to maintain and improve our transportation systems. Thank you for your time and attention to this important effort. We appreciate your commitment to making our transit system better for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Murray Bowden, followed by Jesse Figueroa.
Good morning. This is a little first for me. I haven't been to a meeting like this in a wheelchair before. This one I can still walk around a little bit, but I can't go any distance in a wheelchair. And I'm learning all kinds of different things about people in wheelchairs. First, I used to speak from over there on a little platform. Now I have to speak from here because personal face-to-face interactions are the way to go. All of these years I've been doing it wrong because I failed. The road lines never got fixed. So I've been doing it wrong, and there is a different way to do it. Each of you sitting over there and behind me will notice when the light turns green, traffic doesn't move. Why? Because the person in the front's texting. I haven't been able to stop them. Some of you up in the front there are going to get in touch with the governor and say that we have a problem with the Department of Transportation. The law has its faults, but it's clear enough that if you follow it, it'll make roads safer. It was taught to me by an old friend who was correct. Consistency is what makes safety. So each of you sitting up there and behind me, watch when you get to a traffic light and traffic doesn't move. Then make it known to the governor that we need a commissioner of transportation who will enforce the law so it's safer. Every accident reduces the amount of congestion and speeds up traffic. Thank you for letting me here today.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jesse Figueroa, followed by Iris Kelly.
Morning, everybody. Y'all missed me. Unfortunately, I was in a motor vehicle wreck in December, and I missed you guys in person. I'm glad to see y'all. So the only problem is on the bridges is people going too fast, especially the New York City buses, all types. And people have been fooling around with this and that, not making signals, and it's a concern for everybody. So I live in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and the 2 gentlemen are correct. People playing with their phones at the light, and go means go. If you got to call your mother or father, wait till you pull over and your final destination, for God's sake. That's how accidents happen. A couple of buses almost got involved in a wreck because of these unsafe motorists, so even on the bridges. So That's the only safety concern for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Iris Kelly, followed by Jason Anthony.
Yes, I have crossing streets and corners that I have the traffic lights for visually impaired people. They need to be have just the, not only the sound but also the name of the street they're crossing. Because not everybody knows what street you're crossing at the corner for people who are visually impaired. It would be much more safer than we know where we're going and what's happening. Thank you. I'm going on railroad. I have to go to that meeting also. Next one.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jason Anthony. Jason Anthony is not present. Madam Chair, that concludes the public comment.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. We will be postponing the approval of the minutes until April 1st to accommodate for quorum. So moving on, Interim President Sheridan, are there any changes to the B&T committee work plan?
Chair Soren, there are no changes to the B&T committee work plan. Additionally, I've been advised the annual procurement contracts report will be discussed in detail at the Finance Committee later today, and the February 2023 financial report appears in the committee book on page 33 as an information item and will also be discussed in the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Chair Mack is joining us via Zoom. David, do you have any opening remarks? And you're on mute. Okay, there you go.
No, everything is good, and thank you for chairing.
Thank you so much. Before I turn it over to our interim president, I'd like to say a couple of remarks. Catherine Sheridan will serve as interim president at MTA Bridges and Tunnel. Before joining MTA, Catherine Sheridan was chief engineer for the New York State Thruway Authority. She worked at the New York State Canal Corporation and at the New York State Department of Transportation and is an expert in highway and bridge engineer. Interim president, congratulations.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the March 2023 MTA Bridges and Tunnels Committee meeting. Thank you to Commissioner Soren for serving as acting chair today. I'm so pleased to have joined this organization as interim president earlier this month, and I'm grateful to former President Danny DiCrescenzo for not only his leadership and many years of service to B&T and the MTA, but also for his strong support to ensure a smooth transition. All of us at B&T wish him well in his retirement. Thanks as well to MTA Chair Jano Lieber for entrusting me with this role. I also wish to acknowledge the B&T Committee and Chair Mack for your support of this agency and its business, and I look forward to working with all of you. I already feel at home at B&T, due in part to my longtime professional background, but also because of the engaged team of B&T employees who have welcomed me. I'm excited for this opportunity to continue the impressive work of this agency while looking ahead to new achievements. Be assured I am firmly committed to building on this success with renewed focus on the goals of safety, revenue protection and recovery, and the customer experience. Customers who choose to use B&T facilities are entitled to the safest and most efficient travel environment we can provide. The winning formula for achieving these goals is working closely with our construction and development partners on engineering projects which improve the customer experience, combined with our own customer education and enforcement measures. We will expand on these themes shortly. As we know, March is Women's History Month. I am proud to report 2 B&T employees are among the women being spotlighted for outstanding leadership by the MTA's Empowering Women in Transportation Leadership Group. Congratulations to Assistant Vice President of Field Operations Cassandra Edgehill and B&T Special Archive Manager Mary Hedge, who will be honored later this month, along with other women leaders from all MTA agencies. Finally, I feel fortunate. My second month as interim president coincides with B&T's 90th anniversary on April 3rd. This rich and complex history will be acknowledged on April 3rd and throughout the year in various ways, but notably in a public presentation by the B&T Special Archive in partnership with the New York Transit Museum on Thursday, April 6th. Event details are available through the Transit Museum's website. In the fall, there will be an exhibit focusing on the history of the Triborough Bridge, now the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge, in conjunction with the New York City Municipal Archive. This exhibit will be on display in their public space on Chambers Street in Lower Manhattan. Further information on these and other commemorations will be forthcoming. This concludes my remarks. If there are no questions, Vice President Rich Hildebrand will now present the report on operations. Commissioner Valdivia.
Hi, Interim President Sheridan. I just want to give a note of welcome and thank you for taking on this kind of gargantuan role. Obviously, TBTA, MTA Bridges and Tunnels, has a very impressive history, also kind of a heavy history as well in our region, and so it's really exciting to see a woman at the helm of TBTA. So I am just so excited and really looking forward to working with you and your team in partnership as MTA Bridges and Tunnels continues to do incredibly big and innovative things in the region, including the implementation of congestion pricing. So thank you so much, Kathy, for your time. You've already shown your dedication to the MTA, so it's wonderful to see it at MTA Bridges and Tunnels, and it's wonderful to see, folks like Allison back, folks like Joyce, people who are really, exemplary of Women's History Month. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, President Sheridan and Commissioner Valdivia. We second your comments. I'd also like to thank our first public speaker for his kudos on our revenue recovery operations. And I'd like to begin with a mention of another productive day of toll violator enforcement by our bridge and tunnel officers out in the field. On Monday, March 20th, our officers and maintainers partnered to stop and tow 20 vehicles in a 6-hour period at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge during a targeted enforcement initiative. Each of these vehicles had previously had their New York State registration suspended by the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles due to persistent toll violations, and together accounted for nearly $600,000 in unpaid tolls and administrative violation fees. Through the 4th week of March, B&T has stopped and towed the vehicles of 529 persistent toll violators, which is 37% higher than we had in the same period last year. I feel honored and privileged to be able to speak about the work performed by our officers and our maintainers out in the field and by the full B&T team who really put forth an effort to coordinate these important operations. To business now. The report on operations in this month's committee materials begins on page 16. For January of 2023, B&T continued to experience strong traffic counts that were slightly above pre-pandemic levels in both 2019 and 2020. Paid vehicular traffic for January of 2023 was 25.7 million vehicles, an increase of 16.9% over the 22 million crossings that we had in January of 2022, and was 22.5% higher than we had in January of 2021 with 4.7 million more crossings. Preliminary traffic for February of 2023 shows that we were 2% higher than in February of last year. Easy Pass market share was 94.4% in January of this year, and the weather conditions were not a contributing factor to our delivery of service at Bridges and Tunnels. And with that, if there are no questions, this concludes this month's report on operations, and I thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Vice President Eric Osnes will now present the safety report.
Thank you, Interim President. The January 2023 report begins on page 28. For this month, I would like to continue to highlight customer experience by providing perspective on where we have come from to truly appreciate our current safety record. Last month, we highlighted this 7-year timeline from 2015 to the end of 2022, representing the conversion to open road tolling. I am pleased to say that this trend is steady as January's collision rate is 4.02 per million vehicles, and the collision with injury rate is 0.85 per million vehicles, with traffic volumes at pre-COVID levels. As Interim President Sheridan stated earlier, B&T has always combined engineering, education, and enforcement as a safety strategy, which is reflected in the next chart showing trends for 3 of our major facilities, the Bronx Whitestone, Verrazano Narrows, and RFK Bridges. These trends are attributed to a combination of law enforcement, real-time communication to our customers on roadway conditions, and the implementation of engineering controls that enhance travel efficiencies and reduce the frequency of roadway collisions. Through regular safety monitoring and working closely with our colleagues in construction and development, controls implemented at facilities include Bronx Whitestone Bridge, the southbound exit lanes to Cross Island Parkway and Whitestone Expressway were realigned, eliminating a merge point, which improved safety for our customers. At the RFK Bridge's Manhattan span and newly constructed ramp to the northbound Harlem River Drive improved mobility by eliminating the need to interface with local city street traffic. And at the Verrazano, roadway improvements increased surface friction and decreased stopping times. Additionally, the realignment from the bridge to the eastbound Gowanus Expressway eliminated a merge point and also improved traffic flow. With respect to employee safety, the employee lost time injury rate was 5.1 incidents per 200,000 work hours, slightly lower than the last 2 rolling years. And that concludes the safety report.
Hi, thank you for the report. So I am looking at the customer collision rate, and I see, it's a tick higher than 2022 and 2021. I guess I'm more interested in when should we get worried, when it comes to, because it doesn't feel statistically significant to me, so I think I just want to understand, how should I be reading this data? Are we concerned that there was a tick up, or do we believe it's not as significant?
So I think we really need to monitor this from a month-to-month perspective as well as from a historical perspective. Those years between 20 and 22 were strange, to say the least, because of COVID. We need to take that into consideration when we're comparing these numbers to the years prior. 2019 is obviously a better year. So when you look at 2019 being a record year for traffic and having that year as a comparison, you could see that there is a reduction and that these engineering controls as well as communication and enforcement is working. So it's
And
a matter
I'm
of
sorry,
track.
what was the number in 2019? If 4.02 is the number February 2022 to January 2023?
6.2, I believe.
Okay. So you feel like this is actually lower than at the peak of the peak, so we are still doing okay.
So we're coming down from the peak of the peak. We're looking at 2019 as being a relative comparable year, knowing full well that 20 through 22 is not considered a normal operation period in its entirety because of COVID. Now we're going to need to monitor forward. And it's, again, this is about providing perspective. We come in on a month-to-month basis. We're very close to the data on a month-to-month basis. And what I propose by doing this on a regular basis is that we can pull up 5,000 feet and get some historical perspective on where we are in relation to where we were.
No, I appreciate that historical perspective, and maybe getting some historical yearly data would help at least provide context for me, because this looks
Exactly.
like it's rising, but it also doesn't look statistically significant. So I just want to check in on that.
Understood.
The numbers look good to me, but they're just numbers. So, do you know what is the? I mean, four collisions per million seems like success to me. But what's the collision rate of MTA region limited access highways for comp purposes?
We've always compared ourselves against ourselves. But if you're really looking at like properties to where we are, For instance, the Verrazano, if you're looking at a like property in a region and comparing that like property to Verrazano, we're doing very well.
Thanks for that. I mean, it's like I said, that's what it seems like. But to what do you attribute the bigger numbers at the Verrazano all the time? I mean, consistently.
Again, the Verrazano is a very unique property. I think we come into our committee and we look to compare the Verrazano to the other properties in our portfolio. It's an unfair comparison. We're looking at average daily traffic of 220,000 vehicles. We're looking at a geometry of 2 levels, 13 lanes, left-handed ramps, and downstream bottlenecks on the Beltway. So to take that particular property and try to compare it to other properties within our portfolio, it's not a fair comparison.
I wasn't really looking for a fair comparison. I'm looking for reasons, and you gave a few there. So, that's my perception was people in Staten Island just don't know how to drive.
You see, Norman and I are Brooklyn folks.
Commissioner, I think that's a fair statement.
Thank you, Eric. There are no procurements this month, and if there are no additional questions or comments, this concludes B&T's committee report.
Thank you, Kathy. David, do you have anything to add before I call the adjourn?
So thank you again, and Kathy, welcome.
Thank you, David. May I have? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to ask one question for the maintenance people. What is the schedule for painting on our bridges? How often do we paint those?
So that's done through our construction and development department. And Joe, I think you have quite a few projects going on right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, our painting program is done on a cyclical basis. Mostly, we do full coating replacement every 30 years, and in between, there's an overcoat cycle and some maintenance cycles that are done, at 10, 15, 20 years to preserve and maximize the service life of the coating system. So our various facilities are in various stages of that cycle, but that's the basic framework that we're following. And so it varies too based on environmental conditions. For example, the Marine Parkway Bridge is a particularly corrosive environment in that it's low to the water and in a very harsh marine environment. So the cycle times there are a little more intense than they are at some other facilities. But that's the basic formula that we're following.
Now, the reason I asked the question, in particular the Verrazano Narrows, which also has all that salt air. You're driving through there and you look up at the towers and you're starting to see some corrosion. And, that's our cash cow. I mean, look at all the money, Bridges and Tunnels turned over last year. So we want to keep these facilities top of the mark. And then, speaking from a customer's perspective, you're paying 1027 or 1021 every time you cross that bridge, and then you look up and you see the rust, and it's like, where's the money going? So we just want to be sure that we're protecting our investment, or I want to be sure that we're protecting our investment.
As a matter of fact, the painting of the Verrazano Towers is there's a procurement out on the street right now to award a design-build project in the fourth quarter of this year, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan. And we will be doing a complete painting of the Verrazano Towers. It's the first time we're actually doing the de-leading of the above roadway part of the towers. So once that project is implemented, I think those concerns you're speaking of will be addressed.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Thank you.
Me personally, I think you're doing a pretty good job painting them compared to the others overhead structures we have where there is no salt air, say 86th Street in Brooklyn, the L, I'm always amazed at how much rust there is on that and how many painters you're not hiring. But as far as our function, though, we're very dependent not only on the bridge, but on the approaches to the bridge and those sort of egress locations. But have you ever seen the stanchions under the on Hamilton Ave, directly, you know, quarter mile from the mouth of the BQE or mouth of the Battery Tunnel? Is the most corrosive, most obnoxious, disgusting, and garbage stuffed into the stand. I mean, you know, I look at that and say, well, this is jeopardy for the MTA as well, though it's an interstate highway, not like anybody in the interstate pays for it. But I look at that and say, man, they haven't painted that thing in probably 40, 50 years. It's some of the ugliest properties in the world. And to me, it creates jeopardy for our property as well. I mean, when the Gowanus Expressway falls down, there won't be a lot of traffic on the BQE, you know, finally.
Great.
I can tell you that we do coordinate with all of our regional partners on all the capital projects we're doing, largely for traffic mobility, but also, you know, we need to keep the region moving as a whole.
What is it with the, is it city, it's an interstate highway, but who's responsible for that particular location? But there's many locations like that. It's not like that's the only one, but that it's just so corrosive and so far gone. It's an interstate highway. Is FHWA in charge? Is city DOT in charge? Who's responsible for that?
I believe that location is state DOT.
Do we have any other questions, comments? If so, may I have a motion to adjourn? Second by Randall. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you.